All right, welcome back to Freethinker Radio. This is 90.1 KPFT Houston. My name is Derrick Bros. I'm here with who we got?
Micah Jackson. I'm Micah. I'm glad to be here.
We got our producer in the house always, Johnny. What's going on this week, Johnny?
Hello. Not much. Just getting a lot of stuff done at the house and, trying to tend my garden and all this quarantine business.
Yeah,
we don't guys holding up.
I'm doing good. For those who are tuning in, it's actually, if you're listening on KPFT, which we hope you're listening, you probably haven't heard from us in a couple of weeks. We did record an episode, but it didn't quite make it on air on time. So some of you might be catching up. But yeah, we don't have our usual start the show off and talk about shows and events coming up because obviously there's not a lot of events and shows happening in Houston at the moment. But we're all staying busy. Again, if you're just catching up, I'm in Mexico at the moment. The guys are still back in Houston, but we are recording this and doing our best to keep Freethinker Radio going here on 90.1 KPFT. And we're also live on the YouTube at The Conscious Resistance. We're on Facebook, Conscious Resistance, DLive, and lots of other platforms. You can find everything you want to about our show at thehoustonfreethinkers.com. Micah, what's going on with you? What kind of exciting things have you been getting into?
And I've been working and freaking out on the news. I mean, I can't even watch the mainstream news, and I'm freaking out on just all the other things that are going on. And then, you turn it on and you can't really hear much that's going on besides COVID. So, you have to dig a little bit further, and we have our sources. We've talked about a number of them, such as Mint Press and these other sources on YouTube that kind of mention these things. And then we get to chase them, further through the network. So I've been thankful that I have been able to work and that one of my employers provided me with a laptop to do the work on, and the other one I'm still going into the office. I'm just hoping that this is an aside, but while I do this work on the laptop, that maybe eventually I just won't ever have to go into the office again. Like they'll recognize that all the productivity is still being done. So that's just an aside. I've been looking around. I talked to y'all before about checking out on the local what's going on with both gun shops and the availability of metals, and paying attention to some of these cities that are ahead of us, I guess you could say, on the infection rate. We talked about that. But right before we were coming on, we were talking about some things that are still going on in Houston. And I think, probably good if we can get into that. I know Johnny was talking about a video that's documenting the music, what's happening in the music creativity scene in Houston during the COVID crisis. And it's about some releases coming up. And we also were talking about what the mayor said. So, we really can't go out and have fun. So all I can do is drive in my car to work, occasionally stop by. I shouldn't say where they are, where I can pick up some silver. And also another place where I can go pick up some ammunition and things like that. It's really weird because the grocery stores, one of them out by one of my jobs they've been limiting the amount of toilet paper you could buy. I know that sounds like, yeah, we know that. But now they're down to limiting that you can only buy one paper product. You can either buy toilet paper or paper towels. And as we get into some of the national news, I know I sent you guys an article about Vermont and Delaware with seed sales and other non-essential things. I'm trying to keep an eye on moves like that around the country with my little bit of off time so that I can watch for them to happen here or to prepare for them. I know we planted some more spinach. Our friend Tripp was over helping to make some room for some trees to go out front. And that's pretty exciting, just on the, being able to start fending for ourselves in ways that we haven't been able to before. I know Johnny was talking about that he's tending his garden. I think now's the time, that a lot of us are doing that in diverse ways. And we're talking about the videographer who is tending their video garden. What's going on with that, Johnny?
Yeah, we recently just bought some basic big bins, and we're going to grow in probably 4 different bins, try to get a good supply of herbs going. So we'll have, or not herbs, roots. So we're getting like ginger, turmeric, and garlic. And we're also going to put some potatoes in there. So hopefully those get going within the next 6 months and we have a steady supply.
Nice, Johnny. So, last time we talked, and again, I don't think this one aired on KPFT, but one of the things we were mentioned about is you doing more efforts in the community to try to get people who are, either out of work or at home or just feeling alone to recognize the solutions. And some of those solutions obviously are growing your own food or just plugging more into the community. Has there been any update on that, or anything else you want to share with people as far as people who are maybe at home and looking to connect with people in Houston somehow?
No, there hasn't been any updates on that just yet, but we're basically trying to figure out the best way to facilitate that. And yeah, if anyone wants to reach out and try to see how we can do it, because we're trying to figure out the best way to promote gardening with each other while not being able to gather large crowds. So I don't know. I'm open to a lot of ideas. That's pretty much where we're trying to. What do you guys think about the solution to that? Because we're open to. We have starter plants at our house, and we're open to share some of our compost. And if you come work, we'll definitely give you some food, or even if you just need food. And that's at the House of J 323 Hutchison Street in Houston, Texas. So if you have any ideas for gardening or you want to work together, please hit us up on Facebook or Instagram.
Yeah, and I want to add to that just again for those who may have heard a moment ago. So I'm in Mexico right now. I've been here for the last going on 3 weeks, and I guess maybe it's helpful to provide some perspective based on what I'm seeing out here in Mexico, because as far as I can see, Mexico is probably 3 to 4 weeks behind the U.S. in terms of what you could say in terms of deaths or people getting sick, but also in terms of the measures that are being implemented. Because, for example, this morning, when we're recording today, I went to a market, big open, huge, just outdoor market with all kinds of people out there, tons of bulk food. I mean, it just reminded me like, wow, there's such an abundance of food on this planet, because even in this one town here in Mexico, each of these shops had barrels full of rice, barrels full of corn, barrels full of lentils, and full of chiles and peppers. I mean, so much stuff, dude. It was really awesome. And people are driving around, going about their businesses. Yes, there are businesses that are starting to close early. Some businesses are only doing the takeout, but there's still businesses who are letting you come in and sit down and eat. Most of the places now have they'll have somebody at the door that asks you to like squirt hand sanitizer on your hands before you come in into their business. Banks are limiting people from going inside. So it's not that they're stopping people from buying money yet, but there's definitely in the name of social distancing, we have to have a long line to keep people from being too close. And then you see some people wearing masks. But beyond that, I mean, it really feels like daily life. Like, of course, I'm new here, but for my friends who are here locally, they're saying, yeah, this just feels like another Monday afternoon. People are out, people are doing their things. And so it's definitely different. Of course, I'm taking precautions. I've been taking vitamin C. I've been high dosing vitamin C. Maybe we can talk about that later in the show. There have been some good studies coming out of China talking about intravenous use of vitamin C. And I think we mentioned last time that there's hospitals in New York City that are starting to use vitamin C. So I'm taking my own precautions, but I'm not locking myself down. We're about to go on a walk after we finish recording this and go outside and enjoy the cool night air. And it is totally just a different perspective from being in the US at the moment, and maybe Spain and in Italy and some of these other places that are locked down. Of course, this could just be a brief window and maybe things are about to get crazy over here or things are going to get worse. But for now, things seem very chill. And there's also, I think, a historical mistrust of the government in Mexico and of the official sources and the authorities. So there's kind of a natural inclination, I think, to be questioning what they're telling people. Whether or not that ends up being for the good or bad, I guess we'll wait to see. But yeah, that's kind of what I'm seeing and experiencing here at the moment. And I guess that we'll see how things play by ear.
I thought it was weird that a lot of people are talking about making it a law to wear masks now. Now the CDC is coming out saying that we should all be makeshifting masks. But I just think it's weird they didn't suggest that earlier.
I think
go ahead. They're just now suggesting it. At first they said it wasn't so effective, but then they pretty much admit. I heard on NPR today they pretty much admitted that they straight up lied to prevent people from scare buying up all the medical masks and taking them away. So they were telling people that the masks were not effective, so people wouldn't, take away medical supplies. But one thing DIY'd it, they could have encouraged that and said the truth from the beginning, but they chose not to and straight up admitted it.
Well, there's some other stories I want to get into when we about the masks. I'll save those because there's some positive news about that. But one thing I want to say to the listeners, of course, if you're listening here on 90.1 KPFT, we're always thankful to KPFT for giving us a home to talk about these things. And we're also broadcasting this digitally from 3 different places as we respect the social distancing theme that has now pervaded our world every day here. But our theme, I guess, if there's any theme for today and that we've been exploring on this show, probably since the beginning, Micah, is authority. And so we're going to talk about the Federal Reserve and the economic system. We're going to talk about some of the crazy surveillance measures that are being pushed forward under this COVID-19 crisis. We're going to talk about people 3D printing their own masks to help out and some of the positive side of things. But I think a theme that we constantly come back to, guys, and that maybe we could spend a moment on is the theme of authority and how people often blindly follow and listen to authority. And as I was saying about in Mexico here, how people, obviously there's still some of that, but there is a history of revolution that's even more recent than the American Revolution, just 100 years ago, the Mexican Revolution and some of those sort of things. And I guess what I'm getting to and what I want your thoughts on and, just the audience to think about is it's interesting how authority has been playing a role in this whole COVID-19 crisis, right? Because we have people who blindly follow authorities that when they say lock yourself in your home, you're going to be penalized if you don't wear a mask, or you're going to be penalized if you go outside. And people like Bill Gates, I don't know if you guys saw this one, promoting the idea of people needing digital certificates in order to prove that they have been vaccinated or have recovered from COVID-19. The UK talking about immunity passports. I mean, these things are being discussed. And the amount of people who just like, sure, yeah, this is what we need to do. It's obviously scary to people like us, but then you have the other side of it and how people's questioning of authority has led to a whole collection of what I would call truly conspiracy theories, not just attacking somebody for having a different opinion, but all like a whole cottage industry of conspiracy theories ranging from COVID-19 is not real to COVID-19 is 5G to, all the different things about there. And it's interesting because in one way, I'm glad people are questioning authority, but because some folks just think everything that any authority figure says or anything that MSM says is a complete lie, they're willing to believe almost anything from the opposite end of the spectrum. I want to hear your guys' thoughts on that, just how authority is playing into all this. Micah, how do you see it unfolding here?
I think it's difficult because that word, we can talk about it the way you, me, and Johnny might if we're just hanging out, like authorities, authority figures, people who assert some sort of control, typically backed with the barrel of a gun, if that's what we mean by authorities. Back at the beginning, we were talking on the radio that they would be lining up at the power and the money trough, right? Because you can never let a crisis go to waste, and they want more of what they get. And we've been watching, as we've been talking since August, September, about the market having dire cracks in it that were never resolved 12 years ago, So let's talk about these people. If we want to talk about the monetary authorities for a moment, they can't manage the money situation. And they keep pushing it to the point that it's broke and need bailouts. And this time they're able to provide a little cover behind COVID-19. Okay. I mean, it just happens that now they're getting loud about it. So there's that. And then there's and I know we're going to get deeper into this one, Derrick, but then there's the Justice Department and let's put that in context. We have banksters that can't manage money. We have a Justice Department that's looking to do things like suspend habeas corpus. In other words, take away your right to a day in court. So you may never even show up. Your family, you could be disappeared and your family would never see or know what happened to you. I mean, that's what the meaning of the word habeas corpus is. Show us the body. That's why you're brought before a judge, so that the whole society can see that you weren't just taken away, that you were brought up in, so we all know what habeas corpus is in the most part. So you've got these justice authorities that seem to not care about justice. So I don't know, when something breaks in my house or with my vehicle or some electronic thing, I look to someone who's an expert or what we might call an authority in that way. And those people tend to give me resolution and fix my problem. But these things that we're calling authorities or assert themselves as authorities and prop themselves up as authorities and take money to entrench their position and make, war across the globe. I don't really understand how we can call them authorities in the same way. Do you all understand what I'm saying here?
Yeah, that's a really interesting concept. I also think that it has a lot to do with, you're willing to give those things away if you don't become your own authority on them. You don't take the authority or the initiative to learn how to fix your car, then you have to rely on someone else to do it. And obviously, some of these problems are a little bit bigger than that. With the economy, there's not much to do with that, but I don't know.
Well, I want to mention. So I brought up Bill Gates just a moment ago. The thing that's interesting to me is how people in our world, like you said, Micah, there's authorities who, the guy who's the authority on how to clean your dishwasher, how to fix your dishwasher, how to fix a broken car, and we go to those people when we need help instead of just no, forget that guy, I'm going to figure it all myself. But then there's people who just get propped up in front of us, either by the media or by somebody else. And I think Bill Gates is one of these very dangerous people that is being propped up and has continued to be propped up. We mentioned this, I think, before, but you had Bill Gates in 2016, 2017, something, that speech on YouTube that's gone viral of him talking about how a pandemic was going to come. And I go on the video and there's people saying, somebody make this man president, please. Yes, he was so right. We should listen, and there's just this, there's no depth of who is this man? The guy created Microsoft. That's what we're all told. He was a computer genius, but what makes him an authority on science and on these various fields, and I think that's really dangerous. But if you look at what's happening, Bill Gates is being interviewed by CNN. He's being taken as some kind of authority again on this topic. And the ideas he's putting forward are really dangerous in the sense of what I mentioned earlier, digital certificates to prove that you've been vaccinated or recovered in order to travel. That the fact that idea is being floated, and I know we mentioned this before, but I'm going to reiterate it again for our listening audience on KPFT. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation helped fund the Event 201 exercise, which simulated a coronavirus pandemic in October 2019 before any of this started happening. Now, I don't know what that means per se. We can definitely try to draw some lines and try to understand that. But my point is, a man that stands to benefit and a man that funded an exercise that is eerily similar to what we see unfolding in our world right now is now being propped up as an authority. And not only as an authority, but he's saying, the president's wrong. We need to lock the country down for, several months if we're really going to get rid of this thing. And when we come back, I can see having some sort of immunity passports or digital certificates. These are just crazy, scary ideas that, I don't know, it really freaks me out. And I guess that's why I'm always trying to deconstruct what authority is and who those people are.
Well, I think we've figured it out. And for the most part, you've got these two classes, real authorities of something who know how to give you answers, and the people who assert that they are authorities or get propped up, as you said, for being authorities. In the end, all these decisions are left to us to think about, right? And in the end, when you resist Caesar or something like that, you're going to deal with the consequences. Even good consequences even good actions have consequences. So we got to think about things in a way that hasn't always been comfortable for people, in a way that maybe our school systems haven't taught us, in a way that is self-reflective and responsible, in a way that isn't quick to know everything because it hasn't learned everything yet, in a way that we, can take in diverse data from diverse sources and evaluate that and to come to some sort of strong opinion that we recognize as a likely opinion at best, that in this sea of information that we're getting from many different sources, that's really where your average consumer of information is. Then you can get back to the authorities or the expert. Like right now, out of the three of us, you're the expert on what's going on in Mexico because you've got the credentials, you're right there. And Johnny, you're the expert on, what's going on with that documentary they're doing on the Houston music scene because you're talking to the guy and you know about that. And that makes sense. Like I could learn from each of you about those things. But this other stuff, people tend to just hear it over and over. Wasn't it Hitler that said if you repeat something enough times, the people will think it's true? I'm not saying COVID-19 is false. It's obviously a virus out there affecting people. But 1.5 million people die in car accidents, and one way to stop car accidents is to not drive anymore. And so, I mean, how far do you
Don't
take
give
these
them any
things?
ideas, Micah.
But how far do we go, and why is this one so special? What makes it so special? And I understand your question about trying to, nail down authority. I think it's the fact that we all need that second class, that first class of authorities, the people to help us understand what is a G chord, help us understand.
Also, isn't it more dangerous when you got to ask yourself, is the authority fear-based? Is the reason that you're following it based off of fear? I was looking into the book by Alexander Solzhenitsyn, The Gulag Archipelago, and he said that most of the time everyone just accepted the authority of the Communist Party all the time because they assumed that there would be a mistake or that nothing ever happened, and so no one spoke up, and it just got worse and worse. And they said they were all just lying to themselves at a certain point, and they were just trying to pretend like things weren't going in a certain direction. So if we don't pay attention to what the people are doing with their authorities and don't start thinking like, oh, it's not going to be me, when it could just be, they're following your neighbor. Now your neighbor can't, have access to his bank account, or now someone else lost their jobs, it couldn't just be you, and we should be speaking up about it.
Yeah, and then the whole thing is going to get dicier if we move towards this smart grid technocracy with a social credit score attached to it. You guys have been listening to Free Thinker Radio here on 90.1 KPFT Houston. Just a reminder, we're here every Friday. During this COVID-19 pandemic, we are pre-recording episodes and sending them into KPFT. So hopefully you are hearing them on a Friday afternoon as you're driving around the city, or you're social distancing at home, or you're enjoying whatever you're doing. We try to be here every week, bringing you guys insightful information. And essentially what we were just talking about, Micah and Johnny, I think is just being a critical thinker, being a free thinker, questioning these things. The whole kind of message of this show for the last decade, to get people to question and think about these type of situations and everything we're in. Let's go ahead, Micah, unless you want to get something else.
I want to say one thing real quick. Because Johnny led us here, and I think it makes a little bit of sense to go here. So we bounced around the dynamic of authorities. We hit on two different authorities, right? One that's just propped up and one that actually has something. And then Johnny brought in the idea of a fear-based authority, right? The gulag and that sort of thing, and, a boss. And then there's the other, that one obviously makes sense for the one who just props himself up or has a gun or something, right? So then the other one is what? If it's not fear-based, is we're getting what? Empowered, love. We're getting something that we can measure, like in fruit. In one, we're getting fear. The other, we're getting love. So I think that's something we have to think about when we hear these people and we judge them by their fruit. And one last thing, in this crisis, a lot of these little petty tyrants around the country are going to reveal themselves awful early in their career. And I think people around everywhere ought to make lists of the people like the judges and the mayors that are doing these things. And as they move up, see who their opposition is, because maybe they'll be more empowering and less fear-based. I don't know.
All right. Well, let's continue on. Again, this is Free Thinker Radio, 90.1 KPFT Houston. Should we jump into the Fed news, Mike? I know there was some interesting economic developments that we want to keep people apprised of, because for those who have been paying attention, and as we covered on our last episode, whether or not the coronavirus itself makes you sick, the economic repercussions are going to be felt by everyone.
I think that's an important point, Derrick. And a lot of people are raising that up, and it's a good time to study economics, because in economics, we can look at things kind of just more abstractly. We can know that it's wrong to take other people's money. We can know how money is created. We can start looking at what money means, and in a different way that's separate from the brutality of war and all this other stuff that we see in the news. But at the same time, there have been some really interesting things. We talked earlier in this episode and many episodes about how the Fed has been injecting money in the markets for some time. We could go a little bit further into that if we want. But the main things that I really just want to hit on this episode kind of are 3 points. Number one, And this, what we have now, we're looking at here from the Wall Street Journal is kind of the final point. First off, the Fed, I believe it was last episode we talked about, they changed, and you can find this on the Fed Reserve page, they changed the reserve requirement to zero. So basically, no banks are required to have any reserves, not even 2%, not even 10%, nothing. They don't have to have any of your money there. Now,
is that a move that would stop people from withdrawing all the money out of one single bank?
it was a, they
Is
say
that
it's
the
a,
purpose of it, or what?
no bank has to have any reserves, not a single one.
Yeah,
See,
I'm saying, like, is that to prevent like bank run? Oh,
no, they argue that it's to increase liquidity in the market. Right now, the problem has been a liquidity crisis. That's why the overnight rate went to 10%. Money became really valuable all of a sudden because all that money they printed last bailout that they used to give to the banks and the government motors and all those other bailouts. We saw back then what most of these executives did. I think you might remember, Derrick, they were taking vacations. They were buying back their own stock buybacks. They were propping up this fake recovery that most people aren't really living much better off than they were 10 years ago. The median income hasn't increased. So this whole this whole boom comeback has just been a stock market buyback of printed money that they got in the first place to make people believe and try to get back into the stock market, invest more of their life into it and, the game. And then they ran out of money. They basically ran out of lending money and they got to keep the market going. They need more money coming in there. They're broke. So we see now they lower the reserve requirement so that they can increase how much they're lending out. But the other point is at the same time that they lowered the reserve requirements to 0%, and we actually do have a link to that. Yeah, right here. And if we scroll down to the second paragraph, we can see where it says, that now basically that authorizes them not to have any reserves at all. Where is this here? I wish I could scroll this a little bit. Maybe it's in the third, but nonetheless, you can find it right there. So at the same time, the FDIC, the Federal Deposit Insurance Company, the Fed Reserve's a private bank. The FDIC is a government bureaucracy. They come out and they say, your money's safe in the banks. Don't take your money out of the banks. It hasn't turned out well for anyone who took it out and kept it. Yeah, there it is right there in the first paragraph. Sorry about that, Derrick. Thank you. It does say it right there. And as of March 26th, the reserve requirements are 0%. So don't have to have anything in there, nothing. And then the FDIC comes out and says, don't worry, leave your money in the bank. Don't go take it out. So then the final nail in the coffin was that first thing we were seeing where they say they don't have to tell you what's going on in the bank. So, go ahead and trust your bank. They don't have to have your money there. And here they argue that it's valuable in holding back bank data because they don't want to run on a bank. They argue a bank could be solvent, weak, but still solvent, as you can see in that headline right there. If it's weak and a run on the bank would throw it, then it wasn't solvent. See what I'm saying? They've invested up to 100% of the reserves in loans that may or may not come back.
So, Micah, let me ask you this, just for everybody listening at home. So we're discussing the Federal Reserve, and specifically where the story we're looking at now is the New York Fed releasing a paper, as you were just discussing, saying the banks are weak but still solvent. The FDIC is telling people don't take your money out of the banks. The Fed's moving their requirements down to 0%. This, for anybody who understands the Federal Reserve and fractional reserve banking and that whole economic enslavement system, this doesn't bode well for the future of the economy. How do you see, and how are, let's say, other economists predicting or kind of looking at this and seeing how it might affect the average American worker, right? The person who's just sitting there at home waiting to go back to work and feels like their money's safe in the stock market or safe in the banks. How is this going to affect them on a very real level?
I'm glad you asked that question. It's a speculative answer, of course, but I've been hearing diverse answers. Authorities, even the St. Louis Fed said that there could be a reduction in gross domestic product of 50%. Think about that. GDP, gross domestic product, that's productivity, okay? They're saying we're going to produce possibly up to 50% less, the experts, right? So producing 50% less. At the same time, they're printing, $6 trillion at least? So you're going to have a lot more money chasing not just the same goods like you get with inflation, but less goods. And so what we're going to have is what a lot of people speculate is we're going to have a continued drop in price for a little while. As we have as demands decrease because people aren't going around doing things. We've seen already the interventionists, the authorities that believe the free market as such is dangerous, so they've come in to prop up oil. It's been all over the news how Trump wants to help the oil industry. Well, the real reason behind that is kind of long, but bankers have big positions in oil, and the bankers were taking a big hit by the oil going down so low. So margin calls were coming. And what a margin call is when you put something down to trade for more than that. Say you need $1,000 down to trade 10. Soon as that thing you put down, say I put down something that's worth 1,000. Well, if it goes to worth 500 the next day, they're going to call me and they're going to say, hey, we need the other 500 or we're going to sell your asset. So that was happening to banks all over the place and in the commercial realty market. So oil got helped. And, I guess back to the theme of authority, some people chose who to help. And so that happened.
And like you said, Micah, Trump's out here giving press conferences talking about how the oil industry, the poor oil industry, they just need so much help. The government, we need to make sure they get more money. And it's just the same oligarchy that we've seen throughout history. And so the people who think Trump's doing something different, I mean, we're really seeing how, and you don't have to be a conspiracy theorist to say, okay, people are sick. And at the same time, the powers that wish they were, these authorities that we're told, are taking advantage of this to line their pockets, to line their buddies' pockets, to grab more powers. I mean, it's clear. I don't know if you guys can see.
And to cover up, and using this to cover up, to help as a smokescreen for the economic problems that we've been talking about here on Freethinker Radio consistently for a decade, but really focused on hard since last year. We had a number of banks come up with fines. We had, and like we said, we've seen basically not spoken about QE going on since last year. Now, here we are half a year after they've been doing QE in effect. Finally, they're starting to talk about maybe just QE forever.
And for those who are watching online, we are pulling up an article here. This is from the United Nations news website. It just came out recently. COVID-19, the global food supply chain is holding up for now, but the United Nations warning that could change for the worse and soon if anxiety-driven panic by major food importers take holds, the World Food Program warned on Friday in a new report called COVID-19 Potential Impact on the World's Poorest People, a World Food Program analysis of the economic and food security implications of the pandemic. So this thing, as I was saying a couple of moments ago, this event, this crisis, this panic, whatever you want to call it, it's going to affect people's health, whether they get sick or not, because from all the stress that can affect your health in general, and from not getting sunlight, not getting fresh air, but it's going to affect people economically. There's a lot of people. I mean, I was hanging out with a guy the other day who was just watching the stock market and just kind of bemoaning how much money he'd already lost just since this whole thing has started. And apparently the food supply chains might be under threat soon as well, which is another reason why on this show we've talked about growing your own food and getting plugged into urban farms and community gardens and learning to take care of yourself, because we cannot depend on these systems. And I really think, if anything, guys, that this whole situation is kind of pulling off the mask and maybe the illusion that this system can take care of people and can handle it. And unfortunately, we're also seeing ideas floated like more stimulus checks, and the idea that, the state is the answer. We just need more of a bigger state safety net, maybe even a global government to handle this kinds of situations. But I know we've just covered a whole lot. Should we hit a music break before we move on?
Yeah, this is a good part because I think there's a lot we need to talk about with regard to food. And, we probably should have done it right before this one. But yeah, it's never too late for music.
Yeah, let's get into some music. We'll come back. We got a few more stories, of course, and try to end this show with at least one or two positive things that are happening. Johnny, you'd mentioned some artists you wanted to get into, right?
Yes, my buddy Derrick with his band All Gonna Die, which is kind of a bleak name in these times. They just released a quarantine music video of them hanging out in their room and trying to be productive. So I thought I'd share the song. It's called Antisocial, and it's by All Gonna Die. Hopefully we aren't soon.
Awesome. I'm so glad that we can still share music. Thank you, KPFT, for the opportunity. Thanks, Johnny, for turning us on to some good music. And thanks, Deke, for continuing to produce. I know you were talking about the concern with the food supply, and I think that's an important one because we're seeing the stress many stores. And I'm hearing different stories from friends in different areas of the country. Here in Houston, I imagine in most big cities, they're probably trying really hard to maintain it because you don't want a lot of people freaking out at once about no food, right? But I saw this story, and I've seen others coming out where large retailers are stopping the sale of non-essential items, and included in here is seeds. So you can't buy seeds in Vermont in these large retail stores such as Walmart, Costco, etc. And a lot of people, maybe if you're a farmer, you don't buy your seeds there, but you can imagine at this time, a lot of people don't know where to buy things like that. And they're just going to the store. And, there's pictures out on the internet now where they've got the seeds covered up. They're right there available, but they're covered up with a sign that says, due to Vermont law, you cannot buy non-essential. And these have been deemed non-essential. So basically being able to cultivate, grow your own food in some states is now being declared non-essential, and you're not able to buy seeds. For now, it's at these large retail shops. Is it possible it could go to something else? I don't know, but I do think it's interesting to see the different ways different politicians are reacting to this.
I wanted to say a quick tiny fact that there are in fact seeds inside vegetables if you need them.
Johnny, you're crazy. We're supposed to just save the seeds from the food we eat and clean them off and then dry them out and then put them away somewhere safe until we need them and put them in the ground. That sounds crazy. It sounds like one of those things my grandma
used to
do.
It's like using water.
You can put a potato in the ground and see what happens.
Well, and I also want to say, add to the story.
COVID got him.
I want to add to what you were saying, Micah, that there's, like you mentioned, the story we're looking at now is in Vermont, and I definitely have heard similar stories from elsewhere, but also the usual companies that sell people seeds, like Baker's Seed Catalog. I can't think of, but there's a bunch of these big companies that provide heirloom seeds. Nearly all of them, if you try to order seeds now, if you can even get an order, they're saying it's going to be 3, 4, maybe 5 or 6 months before they have more seeds ready. Because when this whole thing started going down, people were recognizing like, holy crap, maybe I should buy some seeds and stock up. And, I've been somebody who's been saving seeds for the last 10 years. And yeah, and like Johnny said, there's also just every time you're eating a fruit or a veggie or something, you can save those seeds. And, not all seeds are going to fruit, but you can definitely save seeds and start having something, and you can start starter plants and see if they turn out. And if they turn out good and hardy, well, you save those seeds for the next season. And that's how all of our ancestors made sure we had food to survive and get here to broadcast on KPFT.
And one other thing with regard to the whole seed and growing and being involved in life in that way is it's a way during the quarantine or shutdown, lockdown, whatever you want to call it. It's a way of being productive still. While they're over there creating money out of thin air and not being productive to help make up for their mistakes, you can actually be creating real wealth. And even if it's a banana, a kumquat, loquat, spinach, that's something that you actually created. Thank goodness for you being able to do that. So it might seem trite, but it's really important because it's the opposite of what this other side of things is doing. I mean, it's almost as if you have a productive people and you have a parasitic people. So
absolutely. There's a parasite on top of the good people. Well, we're getting down. I think we got maybe 20 minutes or so left in the show. Guys, I'm going to run through a couple of articles and just continue our theme here of questioning authority, or really what is authority. These are just some of the articles that, I've been seeing them a lot over the last few weeks, but I literally just pulled these up before we started the show because they're all over the place. And this one is not necessarily directly related to COVID-19, but it's happening. It's something that's happening right now while the news isn't talking about. You guys remember how last year Trump created the new branch of the military, the Space Force, for whatever reason?
I actually have a friend in the Air Force who had a recruitment meeting for the Space Force. So they are recruiting people from the Air Force now.
They're actively recruiting for the Space Force.
Yeah.
Well,
yes. And
apparently
he said they described it as similar to Star Trek, and they're going to be trying to control parts of pretty much what you're saying, put up a grid up there. But I don't know if they're going to be defending it, with manpower. But
Well, who knows? Maybe all those recent releases of CIA videos claiming to be UFOs and released in the mainstream of the last year, maybe they know something we don't know. But what we do know is that U.S. Space Force has awarded the company Serco a $57 million grant to support a deep space surveillance system. Serco Inc. has received a new $57 million contract from the U.S. Space Force to manage, operate, and maintain the ground-based electro-optical deep space surveillance system. That's a mouthful. The contract has an 8-month base period and 6 one-year option years. This system, known as GEODS system, supports the U.S. Strategic Command and theater warfighters' requirements through the detection and surveillance of deep space satellites using 1-meter telescopes that are equipped with sensitive digital camera technology. The system detects, tracks, identifies, and reports on all deep space man-made objects in Earth's orbit. So it's their beginning of taking over, be the beginning of Star Wars and Star Trek coming to life, as you said, Johnny. Just a couple others, and this is the theme that I'm kind of stressing here is, guys, while you're looking elsewhere or while you're distracted by some other aspects of this whole event, there are many people trying to raise awareness about the security and privacy concerns that governments are grabbing right now. This is coming from Naked Security, which is a security and privacy website. Rights groups appeal to governments over COVID-19 surveillance. Digital and human rights groups have joined together in a rare worldwide appeal to governments to respect privacy when handling COVID-19 cases. As the number of cases around the world exceeds 1 million and the number of deaths reaches more than 70,000, more than 100 groups have signed a letter to governments around the world urging them to be measured in their response to coronavirus, saying that they should consider human rights in their efforts to track the potential spread of the disease among the populations. The letter says, quote, "States' effort to contain the virus must not be used as a cover to usher in a new era of greatly expanded systems of invasive digital surveillance." The groups on there include AI Now, Algorithm Watch, and the World Wide Web Foundation, along with Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, the Irish Council for Civil Liberties, the Swedish Consumer Association, and on. And just a couple of key points. The letter calls for the governments to take the option of increased digital surveillance off the table. So don't consider surveillance unless you can meet the following conditions, which include keep surveillance measures lawful and transparent, have an end date when the extra surveillance measures will cease, because that's the problem that we're seeing, guys, is they're rolling out these new thermal imaging cameras or giving the CDC I think it was like $1 billion in the stimulus package for health surveillance. And there's no end to when these things don't end once the coronavirus has been solved or taken care of. They're just indefinite, like 9/11 and the Patriot Act. The groups are also calling on the data to be collected, to be protected, to keep the data safe and anonymized, to watch out for algorithmic biases, to only share with third parties according to the law, and a couple other points. It's a troubling situation. I'm going to just show a couple others here. Privacy concerns. This is from Bloomberg.com, so we're getting into mainstream. Pandemic data sharing puts new pressure on privacy protections. Facebook data scientists help cities and states monitor mobility. Privacy experts are calling for guardrails on sharing consumer data, because many of the listeners may have seen that recently companies including Alphabet Inc., Google, and Facebook Inc., which were already collecting our data for advertising purposes, and huge volumes of data from websites and smartphone apps like Maps and Weathers, which show people where we're at. That information now is being handed over to government agencies to show them whether or not people are actually quarantining, to show if social distancing is being effective. It says the ability to pinpoint the movements of individuals is crucial at a time when controlling the pandemic spread depends on compliance with government orders to stay home if possible and to practice social distancing if not. But consumer advocates fear that an emphasis on health over privacy, or security over privacy, could undermine the protection of civil liberties, similar to what happened after 9/11, when the U.S. secretly began collecting mass amounts of data on its own citizens in an alleged effort to track down terrorists. So, I mean, it's good to see that some of this stuff is getting out there. What do you guys think on that so far? I got a couple others, but I'll just shut up. And what do you guys think on that, like at Bloomberg and just some of these groups coming together?
Now it's the invisible terrorists we're after.
The terrorists were always invisible, right? Whether it's like a world war on terrorism that are terrorists that are hiding in caves, or they could be around every corner, or it could be your neighbor. If you see something, say something. Now it's another invisible enemy. And you never know if somebody's infected, and you won't know that they're safe until you get Bill Gates' immunity passport, or you have that digital certificate that makes sure you can go back to work, Johnny.
And if you say too much about it, Johnny, all these things Derrick's been talking about, your privacy, they're going to be all up in your business. Like you'll come home and there'll be an agent like waiting for you, just hanging out. And then, if you get real lippy, they'll go ahead and, disappear you because habeas corpus will eventually be suspended and, just be chaos. So, yeah, lovely. Thank you, KPFT, for allowing us to bring this news to you.
It's definitely really scary. I mean, it's hard to think that they're not gonna, go that way if they so chose. Like if they were interested in somebody and they wanted to use the technology, they would, and we would never know if they had done it for the right reason or not, because I assume there's no warrants to collect every single person's location and collect every single person's data. So
well, in the case
of it, our data needs to be seen differently since it's so new. We need to see our data as our personal what I'm trying to say.
It's your property.
Right. Your property. That's the word I'm trying to say. Yes, your property.
And you're 100% right, Johnny.
Property.
Like this is the problem with the digital world that we live in, though, right? Is that most of us, when we want to download the latest app that everybody's using because we want to put funny, faces or make memes or use whatever filters, people aren't stopping. Or whatever it may be, people are not stopping to read the fine print, right? And as this Bloomberg story was just talking about, they don't need a warrant because you've given them permission. Whenever you sign Google's permission slips or Facebook's permission slips.
It's more than that. It's Ring. It's all these things. So it's not just your device. It's now things, it's Ring. It's
the Internet of Things.
It really is getting to a weird 1984 point. Because I can remember even growing up when I was younger, and it was seeing statistics like the average American is filmed this many times a day. It'd be easier statistic to say when you're not being filmed at this point.
Absolutely.
Kind of weird. Weird, yeah. And we're doing it for ourselves. Here we are.
This is the era of COVID 1984, as some have started to call it. I'm going to hit a couple more stories just with the same thing.
Up, man.
Yeah, it is. Unfortunately, this is the reality. This one is a local news story from Washington. Will the coronavirus battle further erode Americans' privacy rights? A similar theme. This one's coming from Biometric Update. Privacy rights advocates say time limits are necessary for outbreak surveillance measures. Facial biometrics, less so. So Reuters recently reported that the United Nations Special Rapporteur on the Right to Privacy is warning that surveillance measures introduced during this crisis could cause lasting damage to privacy rights. His name is Joseph Kanatachi, and he says, quote, dictatorships and authoritarian societies often start in the face of a threat. That's why it's important to be vigilant today and not give away all of our freedoms. Can we say that again? That's why it's important to be vigilant today and not give away all of our freedoms.
All of our freedoms. And
another one here from Salon, which is more of a left-leaning outlet, but it just shows you the lefties, the right-wingers, even the mainstream are asking the questions. Salon chose the title, Big Brother and the Coronavirus. Will pandemic be used to expand the surveillance state? Activists warn we must not sleepwalk into a permanent expanded surveillance state out of pandemic paranoia. And one more here. Oh wait, that's our positive story for the day. I'll save that one. But yeah, I mean, you guys see the theme I'm going here with this. I mean, I'm glad that it's being written about, but if you tune into CNN.com or MSNBC or, those big box ones, that the main three or whatever that people paying attention to, that is not the message that's being pushed at all. I mean, it's honestly that the prediction since our last show, guys, has been that beginning this week and next week, by the time the viewers are hearing this, they said that there's going to be 100 to 200,000 dead people and dead Americans. Like that's what they've put out. The numbers themselves, these are not things I'm saying. This is coming from, the authorities again and government making those kinds of claims. Now, I mean, that's the message that they're putting out there. I'm over here on CNN.com for the people who are watching, and there's nothing on here about privacy. There's nothing on here about surveillance. Should we, it's just pushing
body bags,
the fear about the whole situation. And I mean, I know that our listeners already understand this, we're talking about a network of people who all benefit. The people, the mainstream corporate media, the deadstream media, They don't want people questioning things. They don't want people challenging these systems. And they don't want people thinking that, hey, maybe we shouldn't just blindly give away all of our rights. So we got to, I guess that's our role here, or one of the roles that we're playing here on Free Thinker Radio on 90.1 KPFT Houston, is to get people to think and to question and to challenge these things and to wonder, what we might do to prevent these things from getting worse. Because if we don't do anything other than just blindly accept it, and I'm not saying go out there and be an idiot and be like some of these people who are going around and just making a joke of the whole thing and coughing on people or anything like that, but maybe be a little bit skeptical when they tell you that they want to lock you in your homes for your own good, or that they want to, what is it now, Johnny? If you come back from a hot spot in Texas, the Texas state troopers are going to show up randomly for house checks?
It's Louisiana. If you come from Louisiana, if you have a Louisiana license plate, there's a high likelihood that you will be pulled over. And if it's anything like my mom said when she came back from Detroit, they do have systems of being checked up on. And another just little side note, I talked to this person who runs a recording studio, and he said that, even though it's just a small building and I guess it's considered non-essential, but people are in fact driving by businesses, checking to see how many cars are in the parking lot, and the fines can get pretty crazy. I think they start at $1,000.
Fines for going to the wrong place and coming back and not quarantining. I mean, like, I'm not saying I know what the perfect situation is, but I definitely can see how this thing gets out of hand. I think we're winding down maybe to the last few minutes here. Micah, I saw this story and I thought about you, not in a weird way, but in a way that you keep up with these stories.
Don't ever say that again.
Man.
Have you seen this one? Do you want to kind of comment on this? What we're looking at here is George Pell.
I actually hadn't seen that one, and I can understand why you said, because I think this is one of those things that I've often brought to light on the radio show, particularly with regard to the school districts around Houston, since everybody's children are forced to go to school, right? And they should be able to guarantee the safety. But I imagine this is another similar situation here. The 78-year-old ex-Vatican treasurer, the most senior Catholic figure ever jailed for these crimes. So, this goes back to your, questions about authority, and this is the type of abuse that they can get away with. And no, I hadn't seen this one. And it's troubling. I also saw that the Supreme Court is further delaying hearing cases. I thought that was interesting. Another headline I saw that I thought was interesting, and it was from CNET, is the U.S. box office made just $5,000 the last week. This time last year, it made $200 million. So, there's going to be some long-term rules from the economic effects of this.
Well, one thing I want to say on this one here that I pulled up, the reason I wanted to pull it up is because, we've talked about Jeffrey Epstein before most people. We've talked about Weinstein. We've talked about the local level, Micah, the schools, the principals, the cops and all that. In this case, as you said, it's a former Vatican treasurer who was one of the most high-profile people to be accused. This is in Australia. This is a global thing for people.
Did they try to cover it up?
Didn't they definitely covered it up.
Have they ever not?
And they claim that only 2 boys had been abused by him in the 90s, but there were definitely other.
Only people.
2. That's what they said. It was just these 2 boys. But then this is the story, though, is that the High Court of Australia on Tuesday, this past week, or actually Tuesday, it's already Tuesday in Australia, they have quashed the verdict, meaning that the cardinal will immediately stop serving a 6-year jail sentence. So he gets caught, molesting at least 2 boys and was charged in 2017. And then now they overturned that and he was set free immediately. Not like anybody else. We have to wait.
Out. Come on.
I mean, this is the thing is like this guy obviously was a high level position. Is he getting
I don't know enough about the thing. Is he getting another case, or is he just done now?
It says,
what does quashed mean? That's the question.
A full bench of 7 judges ruled unanimously in Cardinal Pell's favor, finding that the jury had not properly considered all the evidence presented at trial. It was the Cardinal's final legal challenge after his conviction was upheld by a lower court last year. He said, "I have consistently maintained my innocence while suffering a serious injustice." So he was immediately, it says,
appealed.
Meaning the cardinal will immediately stop serving the 6-year jail sentence. So he was released immediately. And who knows, maybe this is one of the cases where it was false accusations. I don't know many young boys who just go around lobbing accusations like this willingly because it's an uncomfortable thing that nobody really wants to talk about. And we know that the Catholic Church has a history with these things. We know that Hollywood has a history with these things. We know that the politicians have a history of these things. It's a global, one might almost call it a pandemic. But here's my positive story, guys. Johnny, you mentioned face masks earlier.
I thought that was it. I was really bummed.
That was not the positive story. Let's make that clear. The positive story is coming from the Medville Tribune, which is a local newspaper. And it says a professor and area manufacturers in, where are we at? In Medville. I'm not sure where this is at, but it says that they've come together to 3D print face shields for people in need. Professor of art at Allegheny College and area manufacturers are collaborating with 3D printers to make plastic face shields for the Medville Medical Center. On Friday, the first 30 shields out of a planned initial run of 50 were delivered. The shields consist of a plastic headband with a removable elastic attached to the back for a fit and a removable clear mylar face shield on the front. They can be sterilized for reuse by the hospital. So I think it's pretty cool. You know, we've talked about a lot of different technology over the years and the power of the potential for 3D printers. We've seen stories about 3D printing houses and cars and skin and organs. And, you know, it's a really, that's, I guess, the double-edged sword that is technology, right? It can be used for all the crazy things that we were just talking about, Big Brother surveillance and all that. And it can be used to 3D print face masks.
That's awesome. We're going to see a lot more stuff like that coming out, more people stepping up like that.
Can it 3D print a plan for Venezuela?
No, I don't think we have a plan for Venezuela, but I know that the U.S. government has a plan for Venezuela. We're probably winding down on time. I don't want to cut us short, but I imagine that we're getting to the end here.
We forgot something important, y'all.
What do we got?
A lot of things.
The mayor says that y'all criminals should just chill. You guys need to just chill out, okay, during this crisis.
Is that the official Houston strategy for COVID-19? Chill?
All the criminals are just going to get together and chill. That's what the mayor.
You guys just hang out.
Just chill here.
I saw the same thing though.
We're not going to let the cops come, but
I saw the same thing in Baltimore and in Chicago. You know, which are definitely places that are known for criminal activity, and they're just saying like, "Look, criminals, can you guys just set things aside for the moment?" And the funny thing is, and Micah, you said this earlier, I was confused.
Have they ever had a dialogue before?
I was confused though. I thought that the mayors of these various cities and the governors of these states, I thought they were talking to their buddies, the criminals in government, and saying like, "Hey guys, let's chill out. Let's stop robbing the people." And you know,
that's kind of the way I took it too. Like,
man,
let's be serious about this. The things have gotten really bad. We need to respect their rights, not counterfeit money, and just chill.
Maybe Art Acevedo could chill.
Yeah, maybe. Hey, well, at the least, right? If there's a pandemic and there's people locked down, we shouldn't expect any more HPD shootings or any more, invasions of liberty in that way. I mean, who knows? Maybe with this thing you're talking about, Johnny, if people are coming back from Detroit or from hotspots, they could expect a random visit from an officer coming to just check up on them and make sure that they've quarantined. And again, for the listeners on KPFT, I hope nobody thinks that we're trying to make light of the situation. We really do take this serious, and in the sense that we've tried to bring it to your attention, these different issues. The economic side, the checkpoints, the surveillance, like all these different things are a part of the discussion around coronavirus. If we only focus on the coronavirus of, are you going to get sick or how long is this going to last, then we've seen, history has shown, and as the Bloomberg article just pointed out, just like 9/11, they will take as much power as possible. And the only thing that is going to slow them or stop them down are people asking questions, people pushing back in whatever way is possible. And that's why we're here on KPFT. That's why we do Freethinker Radio. You can find us at thehoustonfreethinkers.com. You can find us on YouTube at The Conscious Resistance, where all our show archives are at. And of course, we're on Facebook at Freethinker Radio. And what else?
I want to thank everybody for taking the time to listen, especially in this time, to listen to something besides the media, the mainstream media's news. I also want to, you mentioned the questions and holding people accountable. I think that's very important. But throughout the show, we mentioned the growing of things and being productive during this time. So there's the holding them accountable and questioning, but there's also holding yourself accountable and doing something with your time and with your life that's productive so that you can be fulfilled without the need for them as much. So I hope that this show advances those two things, if nothing else, the advancement of holding these alleged authorities accountable, working for freedom, and also that entails, doing something productive for ourselves. What's up, Johnny? We're closing out.
Yeah. We'll see you guys later.
Who are we going to close out with?
Listening. Oh, we're closing out with, you guys had the idea.
Something cool. We're going to play, Motion Hotel. Yeah, let's play some Motion Hotel. These are old friends of Freethinker Radio. We haven't heard them in a while, and they got good vibes. So maybe while you're dealing with your COVID-19 pandemic, panic, isolation, don't give up on the world. There's good people out there doing good things. We have to help each other more than ever, I think. And let's enjoy some music. We'll be back next week. This is Freethinker Radio, 90.1 KPFT Houston. Peace.
Peace.
Later.